For the last 2 years, you guys have been begging me to talk about Dawn of Sorrow. And truth be told, I planned on releasing this video for Halloween last year, but then Konami dropped the Castlevania Dominus collection out of nowhere, and that changed the landscape entirely. Suddenly, the best way to play Dawn of Sorrow was no longer on the DS. It was on modern platforms like PlayStation, Steam, and even the Nintendo Switch. But all this is good news. The DS Castlevania trilogy is now more accessible than it ever has been. And after glitch testing on all these platforms, I'm pleased to confirm that regardless of if you prefer to play on original DS hardware, emulate the DS games with something like Desmume, or play them through the Dominus collection, every glitch you're soon to see in this video will work for you. Your platform does not matter. If you're playing the game, these will work. That means it's time to break Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow. This video is sponsored by Retro Revolution, a brand for which I know you've never seen an ad, because this is the first one they've ever done. Retro Revolution builds modded handhelds with a specialty for the DS Lite. When he found out I was making this video on Dawn of Sorrow, Retro assembled this beast. A jet black DS with Japanese OEM Nintendo shells, a custom blue power LED, and USB-C charging, integrated directly into the console body. Holding a DS in essentially brand new condition, over 20 years after its original release, is a crazy sensation. And although a black minimalist look is what I requested, don't let this sell Retro short. If you take a look at his storefront, you'll see neon translucent shells, glow-in-the-dark components, metallic buttons, even UV lighting as possible options, all made to order to your specifications. And best of all, Retro is a YouTuber himself, so not only can you get your hands on some one-of-a-kind hardware, you can even watch your order being built right here on YouTube. Check out his store by typing retrorevolution.shop in your address bar, or by clicking the link in the pinned comment of this video. Genuinely one of the most authentic people I've ever had the pleasure of working with. Cheers, buddy. Can't wait to watch you take off. Riding on the coattails of the Game Boy Advance's Aria of Sorrow, Dawn picks up the story of Soma Cruz 1 year after the events of Aria. And boy, did everything in the last year get ugly. For a video game series known for having exceptional artwork, the character art in this game sticks out like a sore thumb. We went from characters looking like this in the previous game to...
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the...
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think the art in this game looks like it was drawn by someone on DeviantArt with a furry as their profile pic. And I guess Konami did too, because 3 years later, they went back to their old style when they released Order of Ecclesia. Regardless of your opinion of the art style of Dawn of Sorrow, the gameplay is still as rock solid as the games that came before it. So for now, we're all just going to have to silently cringe and be supportive while we wait for this series to go through puberty. With Dracula's influence contained, Soma is now living a normal life in Japan. That is, until Celia Fortnite shows up and tells him that she plans on resurrecting Dracula from the dead. Turns out, Epic Games has spent the last 3 decades building a replica of Dracula's castle and filling it with demons. See, I knew everyone using Unreal Engine to make their games was going to have consequences. Since Soma is the destined reincarnation of Dracula, he has no choice but to track down Celia in her castle and stop her from resurrecting the Dark Lord, or he'll lose his life regardless. When we arrive, we meet Hammer, who reprises his role as this game's merchant, and gets angry with us for coming alone instead of taking Yoko along, saying, "Well, why not telling her at least?" We're not even 5 minutes into the game yet, and already have a sample of some of that beautiful Konami English. Soma in Dawn of Sorrow controls mostly the same as Soma in Aria of Sorrow, and so if you've seen my video on glitches in Aria, you can probably guess what's ahead of us. We'll be piggybacking off of a lot of the glitches established in that video, so if you haven't seen my glitch video for Aria of Sorrow, pause this one and go watch it. Otherwise, this video isn't going to make much sense. Okay, are they gone? Is it just us now? Dude, we're not going to be doing anything like Aria of Sorrow. This game is so much more broken, holy hell. Being the first Castlevania game on DS, the biggest difference between Aria and Dawn is this game's admittedly pretty ham-fisted way to force a touchscreen mechanic into an established game formula. In Dawn of Sorrow, just beating a boss isn't enough. Now you have to draw a specific shape on the touchscreen with the DS's stylus upon defeat, or they will resurrect with additional health. In the Dominus collection, these touchscreen elements were changed to button inputs, but you still have to input them correctly or you'll never finish the fight. I think most Castlevania players hate this magic seal system, and for good reason. It's miserable. But I love it, because it's kind of poorly made. And you know what that means. But for now, we need to play the game as normal and collect a few items. First, we make our way through the Lost Village and find Yoko, who knows the first magic seal pattern. Using it, she opens the first boss door for us, allowing us to fight Flying Armor, which goes down without much trouble. In Aria of Sorrow, Flying Armor was a blue soul that would allow us to fall at a slower rate and make jumps we couldn't make otherwise. Except that Flying Armor could be skipped entirely by simply backdashing at the edge of a platform and jumping to take advantage of the additional speed. Surely they fixed that in Dawn of Sorrow, right? Nope. Flying Armor is completely skippable in this game too. God bless you, Igarashi. This skip allows us to reach the village proper and meet back up with Hammer. In Aria, Hammer was our best friend because he allowed us to glitch the game for infinite potions. Konami did fix the memory underflow exploit between Aria and Dawn, so we can no longer get infinite potions here, but unfortunately for them, Hammer is just as much of a glitch trigger in this game as he was in the last. For now, all we do is talk to him and buy an axe. The rest comes later. Unlike Aria of Sorrow, in Dawn there is a button dedicated to performing a special attack with the currently equipped weapon. Usually this is just a flashy animation and a bit of additional damage at the cost of some MP. The special attack of the axe has Soma fly off screen vertically before crashing back down to the ground. You can't actually move while this animation's playing out, and Konami even went so far as to disable Soma's hitbox during special attacks to prevent us from using them to clip through walls and stuff. Too bad. We're gonna do that anyway. First we climb to the top of this room and stand in the same doorway we passed through after defeating Flying Armor. With Soma standing here at the edge of the screen, we use the special attack of the axe to launch ourselves vertically, then quickly pause the game and scroll down to Magic Seal. This is sort of a last-minute function added to the pause menu to allow players to practice drawing shapes on the touchscreen because, let's not forget, memorizing the patterns is now mandatory to finish the game. Or is it? We won't be drawing any more magic seals for the rest of this playthrough, but that does not mean we won't be making use of magic seals indirectly. Remember how I said that Konami thought to disable Soma's hitbox during special attacks to prevent us glitching through walls? Well, practicing magic seals from the pause menu puts Soma back into his default state, re-enabling that hitbox. And so now in our case, since we currently have Soma off screen and have just practiced a magic seal to re-enable his hitbox, when we unpause the game, we perform a zip, teleporting all the way to the top of the Lost Village, a location we shouldn't even be able to access without the ability to double jump. This is essentially the same type of exploit as the Bat Zip from Aria of Sorrow, except in Dawn, we have access to it way sooner. If you're struggling to perform the axe zip in this location, you may be getting this instead, where Soma appears inside the wall briefly before rocketing up vertically, and your map shows that he's just looping upward forever with you unable to move. That means that Soma was a bit too high up when you pause the game to practice the magic seal. Reset the game, and this time pause immediately after pressing the special attack button. Open the magic seal practice menu, and this time you should zip to the right place. I should mention here that Dawn of Sorrow speedrunners actually intentionally delay the axe zip and get stuck in the wall on purpose, because once Soma's out of bounds, it's possible to do some very specific inputs to corrupt the game's memory and skip straight to the end credits cutscene. Not only is this very difficult to do, it also makes the game last 3 minutes. So, I hope you understand why I'm not teaching memory corruption in this video. While it is very cool that it exists, I personally think we should have to defeat the final boss before we can truly consider the game completed. So, that's the route I'll be showing you here. By taking the path to the right, we enter the demon guest house from its back entrance and eventually reach the sliding puzzle rooms. If you're not familiar with the game, what you're supposed to do in this section is memorize the layouts of these numbered rooms, then activate this switch that allows you to rearrange the rooms by sliding them around until you've built a connecting path that allows Soma to move through them like a long hallway. Not only is this profoundly annoying to do in practice, We can't even reach the switch from here because we entered the demon guest house from the wrong side. For us, this room is just a dead end. Or it would be if we couldn't go through walls at will. We perform another axe zip within this room to teleport from room 1 to room 15, allowing us to continue walking to the right until escaping the sliding puzzle maze. From here, we could continue deeper into the castle, but before leaving, activate the switch to rearrange the rooms and move room 5 to be accessible to the left. Room 5 contains the Cutall, a required weapon for this playthrough. Not because it's particularly strong, but because its special attack is the same as the axe, except horizontal. That means we now have the capability of attacking both vertically and horizontally, doubling the amount of zips we can perform. Next, we take the Cutall to... I'm sorry, but this really bothers me. You're gonna have to let me be autistic for a second here. A Cutall is not a thing. The name of this item in the Japanese version of the game is Kataru, which almost assuredly refers to the Indian dagger called a katar, which is also what this item looks like visually. Konami's translators obviously didn't know what that was, and tried to translate Kataru directly into English, which is how we ended up with this made-up word, Cutall. If this was a one-time thing, it might be cute or funny, but Konami messes up English translations all the time. Case in point, there are a line of enemies found across these games, which are named after the demons mentioned in Dante Alighieri's poem, Commedia Divina, better known today as Dante's Inferno. Given that this was an Italian author, his demons have Italian names. So, this Castlevania enemy, for example, is named Rubicante, after one of the demons in the poem. The Japanese name for this enemy is Rubicante. Good job, Japan. And what did we get after the English translators got a hold of it? Lubricant! Look out, he's slippery. You might think this is just a Castlevania problem, but no, this extends to nearly all of Konami's properties. I could give you some disgusting examples of this in Yu-Gi-Oh! You guys are not ready to hear about how Death Camel turned into Des Lacuda. That's the real name of that card in English. You think I'm joking? Look it up! I'm gonna have an aneurysm, I have to stop. Despite its silly name, the Cutall is going to be an extremely useful tool in our arsenal. But the damage leaves a lot to be desired. That means our next priority should be to find a good source of damage. There are a few different options we could go for here, but the one I have in mind is something I bet a lot of you watching have never seen before. We do need to do a bit of prep to get it though, so for now, we continue through the Demon Guest House to reach this save room, which both restores our health and magic to full, and gives us a checkpoint in case we accidentally get one-shot by something. Our next target is here, this long hallway in the Pinnacle, the highest area in the castle, and an area with even stronger enemies than the ones we're facing now. We don't have the upgrades needed to reach the Pinnacle normally, but that's hardly a problem for us. We can instead force our way there by doing a few more axe zips in some specific locations. To reach the first one, we exit the save room in the Demon Guest House, make our way all the way to the left, then drop through the hole in the floor to reach this room with a Persephone and a wall that requires the Puppet Master's soul to cross. Standing on the platforms within this room, we perform a special attack with the axe, pause the game, practice a magic seal, and unpause to zip once again, this time to this location near a Lilith much higher up in the Demon Guest House. Rather than continuing on in any direction on foot, we wait for our MP to recover and perform another axe zip directly from this spot, which places us higher still, now in front of this killer clown with a metal barricade above us. We perform a third and final axe zip here in order to cross the barricade, placing us at the very top of the guest house, high enough that we can make our way to the right to reach... Oh, sorry. I'm in the wrong room.
No. Well...
From here we drop all the way down, as far as we can, past these Cthulhu-looking enemies that hit like a freight train, and enter the room on the bottom right. We jump over these succubus enemies and enter the door to reach the pinnacle, where we find the long hallway with even more succubus enemies before reaching the save room found here. Make sure to save the game in this room so you don't have to repeat all those zips from earlier if you make a mistake. The next step is to return to the long hallway and farm the succubus enemies in this room for their soul. Succubus is a red soul that allows Soma to perform an attack that recovers some HP, but we don't actually care about that. What matters for us is the succubus soul can be used to animation cancel. and that utility will become obvious very soon. For now, we attack all the succubuses in this room disguising themselves as Yoko, and lead them to the platform on the right where they can't reach us and we can take them out from safety. Obviously, we're looking for the soul drop, but they can also drop the flame necklace and the pitch black suit, both of which are items that will increase Soma's stats. So if you'd like to stay and farm for all 3 drops, it could definitely make the rest of this run a little easier. Regardless, we eventually get the soul and can now leave and return back the way we came, through the demon guest house, stepping on the switch to open the locked gate from before, and dropping all the way back down to the room with the Persephone and the wall that requires the Puppet Master soul. We can't cross this wall without fighting Puppet Master, or at least, that's what the game wants us to believe. As we established previously, magic seals reactivate Soma's hitbox when he's off screen and allow us to zip through walls, but when the wall is on screen, the magic seal method doesn't work. That's where the Succubus soul comes in. By pressing up and attack at the same time, and then immediately interrupting it with a special attack of the Cutall, Soma will glow red for longer than intended with the normal use of Succubus. That gives us time to perform 4 normal attacks with the Cutall to buffer our inputs by a fixed amount of time, and then perform a second special attack. At this point, the red glow of the Succubus soul will run out, interrupting Soma's animation while we are on the opposite side of the wall, allowing us to stay on that side without warping back. This is a mandatory technique for what I have planned for us next, so let's run through the string of inputs one more time. First, equip the Succubus soul and press up and attack to execute the Succubus ability. Then immediately press the special attack of the Cutall to interrupt it. Next, perform 4 normal attacks, and finally, press special attack again. Just like that, we have found a way to phase through solid, inbound walls as well. And we're just getting started. From here, we can drop down into the room below and take the door out to the right to reach the Garden of Madness, what is normally considered to be an early area of the game, but we've put it off for good reason. In a normal playthrough, you don't visit the Demon Guest House at all by this point. Instead, you explore the Wizardry Lab and fight Balor, the boss that gives you your first Grey Soul, the ability to break ice blocks by touching them with the touchscreen. Thanks, Iga. I'm really enjoying this. We haven't been to the Wizardry Lab at all, and we haven't fought Balor, so when we enter the Garden of Madness, we do so with 0 Grey Souls, something that shouldn't normally be possible. We soon find the Doppelganger Soul is a freestanding pickup, something meant to be the second Grey Soul a player collects, and so when we collect this as our first soul without possessing Balor, the game gets really confused and gives us the ability to double jump. To be clear, that is not what the Doppelganger Soul is supposed to do, so why does this happen? Oh, me? Oh, I have no idea. This game is held together with chewing gum. We gotta roll with the punches, baby. The craziest thing about this glitch is that the game accidentally granting us double jump here is a permanent upgrade. It's not listed in the ability menu, so we couldn't disable it even if we wanted to. Turning off Doppelganger doesn't affect double jumping at all, so yeah, definitely a glitch. With that, we finally have everything we need to get the damage upgrade I mentioned earlier. We find a save room and quit out to the main menu. This next step requires you to have finished the game once before to have unlocked Boss Rush mode. If this is your first playthrough and you don't have Boss Rush, don't worry, I'll show you an alternate damage method later on. If you don't already know, the Boss Rush in Dawn of Sorrow is more than just a challenge mode for the game. It actually grants exclusive items to your main game file based on how quickly you finish off all the game's bosses. The one we want is the RPG, a powerful ranged attack that deals a fixed amount of damage unrelated to Soma's stats, and the reward for finishing the boss rush in less than 5 minutes. But how in the world are we going to defeat every boss in the game that quickly when our damage output is so low that we're struggling to kill normal enemies? Yeah, about that. The boss rush mode loads Soma into a special map that has all of the boss rooms arranged in a linear sequence from left to right. While you're in boss rush mode, magic seals are fully disabled, as is the practice option from the pause menu, so zipping with the axe is out. But because the Succubus soul is technically intended to be an attack, it is still fully legal here. That means that rather than defeating bosses, we can simply perform the Succubus Zip to pass through walls to the right and skip each subsequent boss all the way to the reward at the end. First, we press up and attack with the Succubus soul equipped, interrupt it by immediately pressing the special attack of the Cutall, perform 4 normal attacks, and then another special attack. Each time we do this, we skip into the next boss room without defeating the boss before it, allowing us to save an insane amount of time over fighting these bosses normally, even if we had in-game gear. Remember, the reward we get at the end is based on how quickly we finish, so we have to get through all these bosses in less than 5 minutes. It isn't all that simple though. Performing all these zips requires a ton of MP, and although boss rush mode will allow us to take souls and equipment from our main playthrough in to challenge bosses, it does not allow us to bring items, instead giving us 1 super potion, 1 mana prism, and 1 rusty food tin, which you definitely should not eat for the record. The mana prism will allow us to restore our MP to full 1 time for free, but will still run out before reaching the end, so that means we have to pick a boss to defeat normally. The best choice in my opinion is the Puppet Master. He's early enough that it doesn't take too much time to finish him off, and lets us save our mana prism for later for use for skipping harder bosses like Death or Abaddon. So when we reach the Puppet Master, we fight him normally, collect the ball he drops for free HP and MP restoration, then continue on with skipping bosses from that point on. But unfortunately, we have another problem. Halfway through the boss rush, we have to fight Rahab, the fish boss. We don't have the ability to sink underwater, and we can't perform the Cutall special attack while swimming. Fighting Rahab normally would take way too much time with our underpowered weapons, so that is not a viable option. The one saving grace here is that Rahab does have an ice attack that can make solid temporary platforms, allowing us to jump on them and stand on solid ground long enough to perform the zip. This may sound difficult, but the platforms last a long time surprisingly. No, the problem is getting Rahab to use his ice attack in the first place. This is pure RNG, and let me tell you, this guy loves wasting time. Expect to have to reset a few times when reaching Rahab, but once you get the proper attack and the platform spawn, executing the zip from on top of them isn't any more difficult than what we've been doing previously. We continue on ahead through the remaining bosses, and use the mana prism the boss rush gives us from the inventory when we run out of MP, eventually making it to the very end in record time, and claim the RPG as a reward to take back to our main game playthrough.
After picking up our Metal Gear weapon straight from Groznygrad, the boss rush ends and we can load back into our main game playthrough, this time with a new item stealthily tucked away into our existing inventory. The RPG is definitely good, but it isn't a game-breaking weapon by any means. In fact, it's pretty much on par with most of the intended late-game weapons in Dawn of Sorrow. But unlike those, the RPG doesn't scale with Soma's strength stat. It deals flat damage. That means whether Soma is level 1 or level 100, the damage output of the RPG will be the same. Considering how underleveled we are, you can see why this weapon is such a big deal for us. It's prepared to finish the game all on its own, and that means, suddenly, so are we. All that remains now is to actually reach the final boss, so our next target is here, the entrance to the Mine of Judgment. To reach it, we pass all the way through the Garden of Madness to the right, and enter the Dark Chapel before being blocked by this wall which can only be opened by pressing the switch on the opposite side. We know by now that we can easily zip through walls like this with the Succubus Glitch, but interestingly in this case, we can simply activate the special attack of the Cutall to teleport to the opposite side of the wall, trigger the switch, and open up the wall from the wrong side, with no need to animation cancel at all. There's no way this is a glitch, they had to program this in intentionally, come on. The hallway opposite this wall leads to the Condemned Tower, but we won't be here for long. Just a few rooms ahead, we encounter Julius, standing at the entrance to the mine. He tells us there's some dark force preventing us from entering, and that we can't go this way for now. The game expects us to explore the rest of the castle now, and kill half a dozen other bosses before returning here. But you know there's no way we're doing all that. So how do we open the gate and get into the mine right now? I wish I had a big climactic build-up to showcase here, but it's really not complicated at all. It's a zip, we're just going to zip again. Take a few steps to the left back into the previous room, and perform the special attack with the Cutall around this point, so that Soma ends up passing the edge of the screen when he reaches the peak of the special attack. Open the Magic Seal practice mode from the pause menu, and just like when zipping with the axe, when we unpause, we are suddenly in the mine, only one area away from the final boss. It is possible to fail the zip if Soma goes too deep into the doorway from the Cutall's teleport, but I'll be honest, the window here is huge, it's pretty hard to mess up. The Mine of Judgment is a linear descent to the lowest point of the castle, and at the very bottom, we find a boss door that leads to death, one of the strongest bosses this game has to offer. We can't even properly enter this boss room since we're lacking the magic seal needed to defeat death, but that's hardly an issue when we can teleport through walls. We perform the same trick again here, pausing the game to practice magic seals, and unpausing to zip through the wall and directly into the boss room. Despite our low health, we honestly probably could defeat death at this point now that we have the RPG, but there's no need. By walking to the left side of the arena, we can perform yet another Cutall Zip to exit the boss room in the same way we entered, skipping death entirely and granting access to the Abyss, the final area of Dawn of Sorrow. The Abyss has a map shaped like a star and contains the strongest enemies in the game, so we'll definitely want to be utilizing the range of the RPG to our advantage, and even performing zips through inbound walls with the Cutall and the Succubus Soul to execute minor skips here and there and hopefully avoid enemies. A few rooms into the area, we find the freestanding Hippogriff Soul, an upgrade that allows someone to rocket up indefinitely by pressing L. Since we never obtained the ability to transform into a bat in this playthrough, Hippogriff will be our only method to fly, so you are not going to want to miss this upgrade. Halfway through the Abyss, we come to face another boss door, this time leading to Abaddon, the King of Locusts. Once again, since we're lacking the magic seal for this battle, the game won't let us enter normally, but we also can't zip from here, because this door interrupts the Cutall special attack animation as well. To circumvent this, we need to return to the previous room, and use the Cutall special attack to warp as deep into the doorway to the right as possible, before opening the Magic Seal practice menu. This will zip Soma all the way through the room to the right, and into the boss room of Abaddon, skipping over the boss door completely before it gets a chance to load in and block us. Once inside the boss room, we can perform a normal Cutall Zip to the right to skip past Abaddon without ever fighting him, same as we did with Death. That leaves nothing but the final boss of the game remaining. At the end of the Abyss, we trigger a cutscene with Alucard, where we learn that all of the souls within the castle have fused together into a single entity called Menace. And let me tell you, this might be my most hated boss in the entire Castlevania series. Phase 1 is fairly straightforward. Menace is in a fixed arc, bent over Soma, and doesn't actually move. All we have to do during this phase is avoid the spike attacks and shoot him in his little dingle-dangle. After dealing enough damage, Menace stands up and begins walking back and forth within the room, and now we have to avoid both his arms and his legs to avoid getting crushed. But that's not the problem. This is the problem. Throughout all of Phase 2, Menace randomly and continuously spawns these flying things with gaping mouths. I checked the wiki and these enemies don't have any sort of official name, so why don't you guys give me a fitting name for them instead? Go on. Post your favorite slur. First of all, they move sporadically and try to ram into Soma, so their movements are really hard to predict. If you do get hit by one, they explode and destroy your health bar. They spawn forever, and the fight is way too long for us to ignore them completely, or we'll be surrounded in no time, so we have to take them out. But, oh, did I mention, you have to shoot each one 3 times to kill it. 3 times. We're using an RPG! There is no great way to address these things, but the closest thing to a counter exists here within the Abyss. By farming these pink demons known as Malakota, we can collect the red Malakota Soul, which allows Soma to perform a circular whip around him with the demon's tail. This attack is powerful and fast, and does a decent job of knocking away all the mouths when they get too close to you to give you some much needed breathing room. In fact, it's so good at it that if you were unable to collect the RPG from boss rush mode, or were just uninterested in doing so, the Malakota Soul is more than capable of finishing the entire boss battle by itself. In fact, speedrunners of this game don't even bother getting the RPG. They just use this. And so, despite skipping almost everything in this game, we take out Menace, officially completing Dawn of Sorrow. And that's where I would normally end a video like this. Menace is defeated, and he's the final boss after all, right? Well, he's one of them. The first time you see credits roll in Dawn of Sorrow, you unlock the previously mentioned boss rush mode, but you also unlock Julius mode, an alternate take on the story of the game, in which Soma failed in his quest and did indeed become the reincarnation of Dracula. In Julius mode, Menace doesn't exist, and instead, Soma himself serves as the final boss. But this is not the only thing that makes Julius mode unique. Up until this point, we were able to skip through most of the game by abusing glitches related to the magic seal system and enemy souls. Two things which do not exist in Julius mode. In order to glitch this version of the game, we'll need a whole new host of exploits. Oh yeah, we're not done yet. In fact, we're starting an entirely new playthrough. The castle is essentially unchanged between the two modes, so our goal is still to reach the abyss, but without magic seals to zip, the way we have to get there is entirely different. As Julius, we have very limited options in terms of mobility, so our first goal is to stop playing as Julius. Right, I guess I should mention, in this game mode, you never obtain new items or equipment, but you do obtain new characters. The first one we find is Yoko, who is waiting in the Lost Village behind the Flying Armor boss. Again, magic seals don't exist in Julius mode, so we can freely access the boss room, and fight the boss through intended means with Julius to defeat it, and make our way deeper into the village to meet and unlock Yoko as a playable character. Yoko is pretty much an upgrade over Julius in every way. She has a melee attack that heals her, very strong ranged attacks via magic, and the largest backward dash of any character in the game. And with these new abilities, we can perform a skip right away. Returning in the direction we came, back through the boss room of Flying Armor, we eventually reach the drawbridge at the entrance of the castle, but are unable to continue this way because the bridge is drawn. Much like in Soma's playthrough, the game expects us to travel underground and enter the Wizardry Lab next, but we won't be doing that. Every character in Julius mode has the ability to double jump by default, and by using it, we can almost reach the top of the drawbridge to jump over it. Unfortunately for us, Konami was well aware of this and positioned the bridge just far enough away that making it to the top this way is impossible. However, we established during Soma's playthrough that it is possible to make unintended jumps by standing at the edge of a platform, backdashing, and then immediately jumping to take advantage of the backdash's additional speed to jump substantially larger gaps. That same technique works in Julius mode too. So by standing at the edge of this platform, just before the water, we can backdash and jump to use the additional speed to land on top of the drawbridge and open it right away, skipping the Wizardry Lab completely. You can technically execute this skip with Julius too if you're precise enough, but since Yoko has a larger backdash, it's much easier to perform with her. Now that we're inside the castle, it's time to collect our next new character. He's located here in the Demon Guest House, and to reach it, we need to pass through the Garden of Madness and fight the boss found here. This is Dario, one of the main characters of the story of Dawn of Sorrow, not that we would know, since we skipped so much of the game before that we never even saw him. Damn. Can't be that important. He exclusively uses fire, and without any way to zip so far, we have no choice but to learn the fight and defeat him normally as Yoko. Fun fact about this guy, he laughs constantly throughout the fight, and it's honestly pretty I said he laughs constantly. I said it's really annoying. Bro, we can't hear. Shut up! In the Japanese version of the game, Dario has a lot of different voice lines he can say throughout the fight. But rather than translating those Japanese lines to English for the English version of the game, Konami just deleted them. So in our region, the only voice line that exists in the game files for this character is his laugh. So every time the game tries to roll something for him to say, it has no choice but to play the laugh, over and over and over. Did I mention how much I love Konami's English translation team? With Dario defeated, we can now enter the Demon Guest House and collect our third and final character of the playthrough, Genya Arikado, aka the Son of Dracula. Complete with his sprite set from Symphony of the Night, Alucard is by far the most versatile character in Julius mode. He can double jump like all the characters in this mode, but he can also fly freely by turning into a bat, and launch himself continuously in the air by pressing L, same as Soma after obtaining the Hippogriff Soul. But we need him for none of those reasons. The reason we came all this way to collect Alucard is that the special attack of the Alucard sword is the same attack as the Cutall, which is just as broken in this mode as it was in the last. With Alucard's toolkit at our disposal, we are now ready to go directly to the Abyss. And we could get there by following the same path as Soma, opening the wall in the Dark Chapel from the wrong side, zipping from the Condemned Tower to the Mine of Judgment, and then fighting death to reach the Abyss. You can still do that if you want to play that way, but I've already shown that path once already, so why don't we get more creative? Remember how I said earlier that we wouldn't be doing memory corruption in this video? I lied. For Soma, memory corruption would be fairly limited because of how few abilities he starts with. But Alucard has the Cutall special attack,
can jump forever by pressing L, can turn into a bat, can shoot fireballs. It's like having a full power Soma cruise the moment you pick him up. These abilities that we never collected during our playthrough as Soma allow us to control how we corrupt memory much more precisely. And so in my opinion, memory corruption as a glitch is much better showcased here in Julius mode. But in order to do that, we have to get Alucard out of bounds in the first place. And that's a bit more complicated than you might think. For Soma, we were able to zip whenever we like by practicing with magic seals. But once again, magic seals don't exist in Julius mode. Alucard may have the right special attack, but in order to zip with him, we're going to have to find a way to interrupt the special attack animation while he's off screen. Julius mode has no new weapons to collect, no worn equipment, no items, no souls. It doesn't even have a pause menu. You're looking at what you get when you press the start button right now. There's nothing to work with. In fact, practically the only mechanic Julius mode shares with Soma's playthrough is the level up system. Once you collect enough XP from killing enemies, there will be a brief level up message that appears over the character's head, pausing the game for a few seconds, then allowing any previously paused animations to play out. And you aren't going to believe this, but just like practicing magic seals as Soma, that level up text also reactivates the hitboxes of off-screen characters. I think you know what I'm about to say next. We're going to zip from a level up. This is obviously more complicated than anything we had to do as Soma. First of all, there's no way to check your current XP total in Julius mode, and we need to make sure we're 1 kill away from leveling up before we continue. The only way I know to do that is to kill one enemy, save the game, kill one enemy, save the game, over and over until we level up, then reset to the previous save when it happens so that we know we're only 1 kill away. At that point, we take Alucard here, to this location only a few rooms higher in the Demon Guest House, stand in the doorway that leads to this hallway filled with killer clowns, and face this angel enemy. We press R to select Alucard's fireball attack, press up and attack at the same time to shoot the angel, and then quickly turn to the left and perform the special attack to warp deep inside the doorway as the fireball hits the enemy, triggering a level up, re-enabling Alucard's hitbox while he's out of bounds, forcing Alucard to zip. So far, every zip we've performed has moved the character from a room in bounds to a different room in bounds, but this one takes us out of the game map completely. That means the camera is now locked to this room while we move well beyond it, and so the screen is no longer useful to us. We'll now have to control everything by looking at the map screen, where we see this white dot that represents Alucard plummeting from the place we zipped. In order to control our Y position, we need to occasionally press the L button to use the hippogriff ability that Alucard has innately to shoot him up vertically and hover in midair. So now that we're out of bounds and have a way to control our character, how do we corrupt the memory? Well, in order to explain it, we have to talk about parallel universes. Imagine, if you will, a bus that can only arrive every I'm kidding. This is actually a lot more simple than it looks. By leaving the map from any side, we loop back around to the opposite, but our X and Y coordinates continue to increase or decrease based on the direction we move. So, to help visualize what's happening, you can think of it as though there's multiple copies of the game map in a tiled grid. Even though that's not exactly the case, the outcome is pretty much the same. By holding left and dropping all the way down to the bottom left corner of the map, pressing L occasionally to maintain height along the way as necessary, we can take both Alucard's X and Y coordinates well below 0, causing an underflow that pushes those numbers into other areas of in-game memory, changing it in the process. Corrupting the game's memory this way is exactly the same technique used in low percent runs of Metroid Fusion and Zero Mission, both of which I have glitch videos for, by the way. What Samus can do by going out of bounds is no different than what we can do right now as Alucard. By taking our glowing white dot to extremes on the map, we can corrupt parts of memory in a way that gives us an advantage, but it's also really easy to accidentally corrupt things to the degree that basic elements of the game simply stop functioning, or even crash the game outright. So the path we have to take here is very specific, worked out through pure trial and error. And don't worry, if you do make a mistake and mess something up pretty badly, you can always reset the game to put it back into working order, then load your previous save to try again. Nothing we're doing here can damage the game permanently. Our path involves dropping from the bottom left corner of the map, then hovering around the midpoint of the next map copy as we work our way to the left to duck under an area that causes a crash, then climb slowly along the rooms we've already uncovered to corrupt Alucard's strength and constitution stats, essentially giving us infinite attack and defense, that is, until our next level up, which will reset those stats to normal values. That means that fighting a boss like Death or Abaddon right now would undo the progress we've made so far, because it would cause us to level up. We'll have to skip those bosses completely, but that's actually a lot easier to accomplish than you might think. We continue to the left, completely off screen once more, then maintain this vertical position as we make our way all the way across to the left of this third and final copy of the map. Our next target is here, this position that corrupts the area in memory that tracks how many warp rooms we've unlocked. By passing over this zone, we instantly unlock the ability to warp to every warp room in the game, including the one in the Abyss, just before the final boss. So now, all we have to do is get back in bounds. That means we can just mash the L button to go straight up, through the top of this map, looping up to the copy above, and continuing to rise until we bonk on the ceiling of the room we zipped out of originally. Once we see the main game screen beginning to shake, that tells us that Alucard is hitting the ceiling of the room below this one, so we know that we're at the proper elevation. Finally, we press R to toggle Alucard's ability to the bat transformation, and then press up and attack simultaneously to turn into a bat. Bat form is smaller than Alucard in standard form, and that smaller size is just small enough to clip back in bounds to this room to the left, correcting the camera, granting us solid ground to stand on once again, and allowing us to play out the remainder of the game in this carefully corrupted state. At this point, you may see all sorts of anomalies, from corrupted text to visually glitchy sprites, a camera that refuses to follow your character, broken transition doors, cutscenes that fail to load. The list goes on and on. In fact, there's about 1 million different ways the memory corruption could have gone wrong in a way that makes completing the game impossible. But, as I said before, nothing about this is permanent. Turning the game off and back on again will always restore it to default functionality. In fact, I would encourage you not to save the game at this point, so that you have a reset point just before we went out of bounds to try again if something goes wrong. Trust me, from here on out, you won't need to save the game again anyway. Now that we've corrupted the memory location where warp rooms are stored, we can access all of them. There's a warp room only 2 rooms to the left of where we are now, so we make our way to it, warping straight to the Abyss, just before the boss fight with Soma. When we enter the room, we find that Soma has taken up Dracula's throne, and Soma and Alucard call out to each other by name before the battle begins. And I gotta admit, mechanically, this boss is pretty cool. Soma only has one attack, where he summons this giant axe and spins it around him. But there's also a Gaibon flying near his shoulder that will roar before charging Alucard at set intervals. What makes this fight interesting is that these 2 attacks are not random, but they are also not in sync and will shift as the fight goes on. So you have to flick your eyes back and forth to check for telegraphs from both of these enemies simultaneously. After dealing enough damage, Soma will transform into a demon, just as Dracula does in the prologue section of Symphony of the Night. I genuinely think this is one of the best bosses in the entirety of the Castlevania series, and so much better than Menace. Unfortunately for Soma, we won't be seeing any of this, because with a corrupted attack stat, we finish off both phases with a single strike, putting down Soma and preventing Dracula's rebirth for good. And that brings us to the end of the Castlevania series. To this day, Dawn of Sorrow is still the latest game to exist in the Castlevania timeline. So regardless of the 2 endings you prefer, I hope this video makes you feel inspired to try a playthrough of your own. Also, I know I tend to rag on Konami a lot, but I truly do think they do a good job most of the time. Did you know that when the Dominus Collection dropped, so much was changed from the original DS releases, some glitches in the games didn't function at all. Speedrunners realized that many of the strategies they relied on didn't work in the Dominus Collection, and that they might have to continue to play on the original game releases to stay competitive. But rather than taking a hostile stance against glitches like so many game developers have done, Konami stepped in and issued a patch for the Dominus Collection which manually added glitches back into the game so it could be used by speedrunners. The up-to-date version of the Dominus Collection is actually more broken than 1.0, because using glitches for fun is officially sanctioned by Konami. How cool is that? If you haven't played these games for yourself yet, I encourage you to do so. The Castlevania community has to be one of the most welcoming groups I've ever been a part of, and glitches or no, we'd love to have you here. Thanks for clicking this video. And if you're watching in October, happy Halloween.